Originally, broadcasters who were approached were not interested because the topic was considered too controversial. And the False Memory Foundation was very active still, and really, I think, dominated the media and made people very afraid of touching the subject. And so it wasn't until later that broadcasters were open to taking a look at the topic.
I was like the runt of the litter, the one my mother couldn't love. Looking back, I can see that's where it all began. There were big gaps in my childhood that I had no memory of at all. I knew in certain situations I had to go to the background. And I don't really know how to describe that, except that I knew I had to leave. I have no idea what happened, but I would just leave. As a child, I had a safe place behind the barn where I would go to compose myself. It was decades before I found out what happened during my memory gaps. My mind had created a family of alters, different personalities who took over for me in times of crisis. They couldn't protect my body from years of terrible emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, but my alters did protect my mind from the memories. Mr. Dyke was the neighbor that lived across the road, he and his wife and 2 children. I remember Mr. Dyke kissing me a lot. I remember the smell of his breath. It smelled like rye. And I remembered me having to touch his penis. But that's all I remembered.
When there's too much pain, too much fear, too much confusion, too much horror, the brain shuts things down so that the person doesn't experience it anymore and is removed from it. This happens in all kinds of degrees. In the most serious cases, there are actually different parts of the self that carry the different aspects of any one trauma. So, for example, there could be one part of the self that remembers what happened, another part that carries the pain, another part that carries the fear, another carries the anger, and another part that is carrying the attachment to the abuser. And that's not an unusual pattern at all, although it happens differently in every individual.
I wanted to tell my story so people can see there's nothing freaky or Hollywood about being multiple. It happens to lots of ordinary people who survive abuse. And that's the point. We survive. Throughout my whole life, I'd find myself in places and not know how I got there. From the outside, my life probably looked pretty normal. I went to college, married young, 3 kids, back to school when my marriage fell apart, graduated in what would now be called environmental sciences. But through it all, I felt nothing. Empty, hollow, blank. The little altars held my emotions, along with a childhood full of bad memories.
There was a few times when we would come home from school and she wouldn't know who we were. She'd say, "What are you doing in my house? Get out of my house." She would be somebody else and even tell us to call her by a different name. And other times that she would act like a 3-year-old kid, younger than any of us, and be sitting there playing with toys. And it was really strange. You never knew what to expect.